Hey, before this video starts, I just want to ask y'all if you could like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. I do stream most days here on YouTube, so it would be very appreciated if y'all could join. Alright, in this video I'm going to go over Yanqing's light cones, traces, relics, his Eidolons, but most importantly I'm going to go over his teams and his playstyle, which is where I think you need to understand Yanqing the most. I will be demonstrating at the end how to play Yanqing, but for now I just have to talk about his stuff. His talent, his ultimate, his skill, and his technique are all very important. His basic attack, you're probably never going to end up using, unless you need skill points, that is. But I want to start with his skill. It does 165% of his attack as damage at level 6, but more importantly, it will activate Soul Steel Sync for 1 turn. Soul Steel Sync is how you're going to end up playing Yanqing. You have to play him around this ability, and you have to understand that it is kind of annoying to play around this ability, but once you're done watching this video and you can understand how to play him, he will be a piece of cake to understand. Now his talent is very long, and there's a reason for that. When Soul Steel Sync is active, he is less likely to be attacked. This is very good. I'm going to skip to the bottom of the passive real quick. When you do take damage with him, not when you're attacked, if you have a shield you'll be fine. When you do take damage with him, it will disappear. When you do have it active, his crit rate goes up by 17.5% and crit damage by 22%. This is at level 6. Now, after he attacks, there's a 55% fixed chance to perform a follow-up attack. This deals ice damage to 37% of his attack to the enemy. Also, it has a 65% base chance to freeze the enemy for 1 turn. The frozen target will also take 37% of Yanqing's attack as damage. Your whole goal is to understand that this is how you're going to end up playing the character. It's going to be based off of his talents. His talent is how you're going to end up playing him around. This Soul Steel Sync is really important. If you don't end up using it right, you're going to end up pretty much wasting the character. Like you've seen in the beginning of the video, his ultimate is where all the big damage comes from, because his ultimate will increase his crit rate by 60%. This is why you don't end up needing to build a lot of crit rate on your Yanqing. You'll see that in the Relic section. When Soul Steel Sync is active, it increases his crit damage by 45%. This is at level 8. This buff lasts 1 turn and deals 315% of his attack to a single enemy. Now the problem with this ultimate is it has the highest energy cost in the game. It is 140 energy cost, which makes him kind of struggle. His technique is actually very good. He will get 30% more damage for 2 turns to enemies whose current HP is higher than 50%. Luckily for Yanqing, he has good light cones whether you're free to play or not, and all these light cones can easily get you through the game. In the Night is by far the #1 overall option. It increases crit rate by 18% and will give you skill damage by 6% and crit damage on your ultimate by 12%, which could stack up. Another thing that's really good about this weapon, the stats. It has 582 attack, which is the same as his signature weapon. In the Night is 100% your best weapon, but you definitely don't need it. Sleep Like the Dead is your second option. It increases crit damage by 30%, and if you use a basic attack or skill and that does not crit, it increases your crit rate by 36% for 1 turn, but that part of the passive can only activate once every 3 turns. It also has the same base attack as Seely's weapon, 582. When it comes to free-to-play options, I said this in my YouTube short, Cruising in the Stellar Sea is your #1 option. 1, it has a very high base attack. 2, you could superimpose it all the way to level 5 for free, and on top of that it gives you crit rate, and it gives you more crit rate when you're attacking a low HP enemy, and then on top of that, when you kill an enemy, you get attack plus 40% for 2 turns, and this character needs a lot of attack. When it comes to 4 stars, whether you're free to play, whether you're pay to play, swordplay is your #1 option. And there's a reason why. The way swordplay works is the more times you hit an enemy, it stacks up more damage, up to 5 times. What you don't know is that Yanqing's attack, his skill specifically, has a total of 4 hits. So hitting an enemy 1 time will stack this up 4 times out of 5. And if you have this superimpose 5, you're getting a ton of damage off of it. Even if you don't, it's still going to give you a lot of damage. Now the base attack is not nearly as high as the 5 stars. It's a good 50 to 100 off, but it's still an amazing weapon. Only Silence Remains. This is a good weapon too, but the problem with it is that the second part of the passive will not activate if there are 3 or more enemies on field, and some of the enemies that you do fight tend to spawn in 2 other enemies, so that second part of the passive tends to cut off a little bit. But the first part of the passive is strong. 16% attack. If you have a superimposed 5, it is 32% attack. This can still be very good on him and is his second best 4-star option. Luckily, he has a good 4-star free-to-play option as well. River Flows in Spring. It gives you 12% speed and 24% damage at superimposed level 5. The problem that this weapon has isn't really a huge problem. It's when the wearer takes damage, this effect will disappear, and it will resume after the end of the wearer's next turn. This is kind of a problem, but not really, because you are going to be running him with shields, but obviously the shields could break. Still an amazing weapon and is definitely middle ground when it comes to the 4-star Lycones. Now let's get on to the weapon that I don't recommend you using. I would recommend the free-to-play options a lot more than this. Subscribe for more increases the damage of the basic attack and skill by 24%, but the problem is the second part of the passive. This effect increases an extra 24% when the wearer's current energy is max level. Sure, that's fine, but with a character like Yanqing, you need to use your ultimate as much as you can. This weapon is fine, but I'd rather just use River Flows in Spring over this. And Return to Darkness is a weapon that I wouldn't recommend using on him, and I would recommend throwing on another character. The weapon has high attack, 529, but the passive isn't really meant for him. It only increases crit rate, and on top of that, you have a chance to dispel one buff on the target enemy. Sure, that's actually pretty cool for a hunt character, but that's not something he's gonna need. Let's start talking about relics. These are a lot more easy to build, but the ball and the chain can be very complicated for him. I'll start with the 4-piece or the main set, which I would recommend Hunter of Glacial Forest. Its 4-piece is pretty much made for Yanqing because it gives you crit damage for 2 turns. But if you're still early game, a 2-piece musketeer is fine. The 12% attack will do you good, and even if you're really early game, a 4-piece musketeer will do fine. But when you're late game, you're gonna end up needing a lot of crit damage. So the 4-piece glacial is still the number one way to go. Let's talk about the ball and the chain. This is where it gets kind of complicated. First, I will say his number one overall option is this one, Space Stealing Station. Increases your attack by 12%, and if your speed is higher than 120, you get an extra 12%. Like I said earlier, attack percentage is very important on this character. The next best is the Celestial one. It gives you 16% crit damage, and when you reach 120 crit damage or more, you get a total of 60% crit rate until the end of your first attack. The reason why this is so good, early game or late game, is because after using your ultimate, you will get above 120 crit damage, and it will proc the second part of this passive. Now, your third option, and the one I don't recommend, is Salsoro. It increases crit rate by 8%, which is not the most important thing, but where it gets really good is the second part of the passive. After your crit rate reaches 50%, which you will reach due to his Soul Steel Sync, you will get a total of 15% ultimate and follow-up damage. He does have a follow-up attack in this kit, and his ultimate is his strongest part of his kit. This is still really good on him, and I recommend it a lot. Now his fourth option is the energy regeneration rate. When your speed is above 120%, your action is advanced forward by 40%. This is very strong only if you have above 120 speed upon entering battle. If you do not have above 120 speed, this is not going to be usable. The extra 5% will help, but you're mainly looking at the second part of the passive, to be able to go more than once per turn. That is the reason why this ball and chain will be good for Yanqing. Now let's talk about what main stats and substats you're gonna need for Yanqing. For body, you want a 100% rock crit damage. I don't think 30% crit rate is gonna be as valuable as 64% crit damage for your account. And attack percentage isn't going to be as valuable either. Crit damage is the number one stat you want to go for when it comes to Yanqing, and this is going to be your best way of getting it. For boots, there's only going to be a total of 2 options you can go. That is attack percentage and speed percentage. Attack percentage is going to be your number one option, with speed coming into a close second. Both main stats are still very important for your character. If you're going to need attack percentage, you should go for attack percentage. If you need speed, you should go for speed. It all depends on your current build. In my situation, I ended up needing the speed. On top of that, substats is where you really want to play around here. As you can see, I have attack percentage on the speed boot, so I'm rocking the speed boot. Versus my attack boot that has really nothing I could use. So I'm currently using the speed boot based only on substats. Now this is where it gets a little tricky. The ball is obvious. Ice damage is the key to go. Attack percentage, if you don't have an ice ball, go for it. Attack percentage is your best option. But the rope is where things kind of get a little tricky. Energy regeneration rate is very key for this character. He depends on the stats he gets for his ultimate, and he does have a 140 max energy. Attack percentage is a good way to go. If you're going to go attack percentage on the boots, you do not need attack percentage on the rope. I would recommend boots attack percentage and rope energy recharge. But if you're running a speed boot, you should probably end up going for an attack rope. I know mine is a little messed up right now. I'm kind of still grinding for this character, so leave me be for a little bit, but I am working on it. Quick thing that I forgot to mention, if you are going to run the energy regeneration rate set, you are going to want to go speed on the boots and attack on the rope percentage. Now let's talk about substats. Very simple. At your top substat, it's like the body. You want to worry about crit damage. When it comes to the other substats, crit rate, attack percentage, speed, and even break effect is going to be very useful. Break effect, you're not going to have to worry about too much, but it is really valuable if you can get it as well. Now his Eidolons aren't really that good for a 5-star, which kind of suck because you're not going to control whether you get them or not. You could just lose 50-50s. So let's start with his first one. When Yanqing attacks a frozen enemy, he deals additional damage equal to 60% of his attack. This is not that good. 60% is very low, especially for an Eidolon for a 5-star character. Your second one, however, is actually very good. When Soulsteel Sync is active, you get an extra 10% ER. Your goal is to always keep Soulsteel Sync active. This is actually going to be very good. Your third one brings up your skill and basic attack. Your fourth one, when the current HP is 80% or higher, ice resistance penetration increases by 12%. This is good, but not really that good for an E4 on a 5-star character. When it comes to the fifth, it's the same as the third. You get your ultimate +2 and talent +2. E6 is actually very strong. If the buffs from Soulsteel Sync or the ultimate are in effect, when an enemy is defeated, the durations of these buffs are extended by 1 turn. What makes this very strong is it doesn't have to be Yanqing to defeat the enemy. Anybody on the team could defeat it, as long as these effects are in place. Now when it comes to his traces, I will say he is kind of a high investment character. And the reason why is because his ultimate, his skill, and his talent all really matter. His talent will provide you a lot of crit, and his skill and his ultimate will provide you a lot of damage. His ultimate will also provide you a little bit of crit as well. After using him, I realized though, his ultimate is his #1 thing you want to prioritize, slightly above his skill and his talent. But his talent and his skill are in a close second. You might want to keep them around the same level and upgrade them both, because he is really high investment, high reward. His bonus abilities are very strong. When he attacks, he deals additional ice damage equal to 30% of his attack to enemies with an ice weakness. That's actually very strong, but his second one isn't really that strong. When Soulsteel Sync is active, effect resistance increases by 20%. This is probably really mid because your goal is going to be never to get hit when you have Soulsteel Sync active. So the effect resistance isn't really useful, but you never know. Maybe one time in one battle it saves you. Now his third one is actually very strong. When a crit hit is triggered, you get 10% speed for 2 turns. Like I said in the Relic section, speed is very important on this character. Let's get into something really important. His teams. One thing you have to understand about his teams is you're going to need a shield on them. He wants to avoid being hit. The way you avoid him getting hit is by putting him across of the shield. So if he's at #1, you would like your shield characters at #4. If he's at #4, you would like your shield characters at #1. When it comes to preservation characters, they have a higher taunt level, which means they're more likely to get hit. Yanqing, on the other hand, is less likely to get hit. So if you put a shield character on all the way to the right side, and he were to do an attack that does an AoE attack, you will end up getting hit if Yanqing is right beside them. So my experience of running this character, a shield is going to be key. Always going to need supports, whether it's Asta or Tingyun or even Bronya if you have her. All 3 of them can get the job done. Now, I want to talk about a certain character, Pella. Pella is going to be one of his best friends. And why is she one of his best friends? Because Pella will nerf the enemy defense with the ultimate, and on top of that, her E also nerfs the ice resistance of enemies, but you don't need her. I could tell you that running Asta as a free-to-play option has been good enough. Asta will buff speed, Asta will buff attack, and she will do her job of breaking the enemy as well. Now Tingyun is a slightly better option. Her ultimate will give Yanqing a total of 50 energy. Her skill will also buff the attack of Yanqing, and she's also very good for him because she tends to do a lot of normal attacks, which will buff Yanqing because he doesn't have to worry about skill points. Now the third slot of a team, you most likely are going to end up running a healer because the enemies in this game do a lot of damage. Me personally, I'll either be running Bailu or Natasha, but in some cases you do not need that much healing because MC could take a lot of damage. And if you're killing enemies fast enough, you won't really need to worry about healing too much. Let's start with the demonstration, and also one more thing, why speed boots can be slightly bad. Currently, my Tingyun is slower than my Yanqing, which I don't want. But it's okay for now, I'm not really in the harder content. After I use my skill, if you look in the bottom left of Yanqing, the blue glowing, that is Soulsteel Sync. I told you in the team building guide that MC will end up getting hit. Again, if I put Yanqing beside her, both of them would have ended up getting hit. Therefore, he would have lost Soulsteel Sync. Now, let me show you what's really important. He has the buffs from Tingyun right now active. Now his damage isn't going to be insanely high, but I can show you what happens after. Crit rate and crit damage boost. Now, if I press C and go to his stats, he currently has a 100 to 218 crit ratio. This is what you want to play him around. His turn is again So look how much damage he's gonna do. All these hits are gonna be guaranteed, by the way. I also want to point out that I am currently on the free-to-play weapon. Hey, thank you guys for watching, and I hope this video has helped you a lot. If any future updates do come through, I will be sure to either make a new video or I will leave them in the comments below. Also, if there's any other characters that you would want me to make a guide about, I will make a guide about any character that I have, except for Sealy because there's already a million of them. Just comment it down below and I'll make a guide.